We've all been there. You run a high-pressure scenario in your head a dozen times. You know exactly how you want to handle it. And then the moment arrives, and you react in the exact opposite way. What follows is a very specific kind of exhaustion. It is especially confusing for highly introspective people, the ones who have spent years analyzing their mental patterns and thought they'd finally outgrown their bad habits. We live in a culture that sells an appealing idea. If you just understand yourself well enough, everything else will fall into place. We treat profound self-awareness as the primary cure for our personal flaws, but reality paints a different picture. Person can perfectly map out their emotional triggers, articulate their own insecurities, and predict exactly how they will fail, yet they still fall into the exact same behavioral trap when the pressure mounts. Professional life coach AC Picard kept seeing this gap during sessions on the Noomii coaching platform. Clients would arrive with remarkable insight into their own minds, yet remain completely stuck in their daily lives. Picard realized that as a society, we have quietly conflated two very different skills. We assume that the ability to observe a problem is the same as the ability to actually solve it. Treating self-awareness as the final destination leaves us locked in a cycle. We become highly informed about our issues, yet completely stagnant in our behavior. To understand why this happens, we have to look at the biology of a reaction. Intellectual understanding operates on a completely different system than our physical threat responses. This diagram shows what happens under stress. Conceptually recognizing your struggle with conflict does nothing to stop your nervous system from inflating a defensive state. That physical override happens in milliseconds. Adrenaline and cortisol drown out the calm self-awareness you build. Psychological knowledge changes what we can see after the fact. It gives us the language to explain what just happened, but it does not dictate what we can do while the event is actually happening. This dynamic creates a hidden danger. When we can't change our actions, we start using our emotional vocabulary as a sophisticated excuse to justify our repeated bad behavior. It creates an illusion of personal progress. We might trace our defensiveness to childhood trauma, mistaking that historical understanding for actual growth today. Knowing exactly why you are reacting defensively offers zero protection against the real-world damage that reaction causes to your relationships and career. Instead of asking why we react, Picard suggests looking at exactly when the reaction occurs on a microscopic chronological timeline. In any behavioral event, there are two fixed points. First, the triggering event on the left, then the reaction on the right. For a moment, ignore both. Focus entirely on the empty space connecting them. This gap is the missing space. These are the fleeting milliseconds where you recognize what's happening before the reaction takes over. In an untrained mind, this space collapses instantly. Trigger and reaction feel perfectly simultaneous. The specific objective of behavioral coaching is intentionally stretching those milliseconds. You have to create just enough room in that timeline for a different conscious choice to emerge. The true grinding work of personal development does not happen in the past. It is exclusively located right here within the expansion of this tiny window of time. Mastering this chronological gap separates those who are simply passengers observing their own lives from those who actually get behind the wheel to direct it. This shift requires us to think and rethink our definition of emotional intelligence. The standard definition focuses on the ability to recognize, name, and understand our feelings. Coach Picard proposes a more functional standard, the capacity for functional presence during activation. In practice, that means staying physically grounded and capable of making choices while your nervous system is actively sounding threat alarms. It is the stark difference between knowing a hurricane is happening and knowing how to successfully steer a ship through that chaos. This is an incredibly difficult practice. Remaining present under pressure requires a completely different skill set than traditional therapy or journaling. True emotional maturity isn't measured by how elegantly you can explain your triggers. It is measured by your ability to tolerate them with surrendering your agency. Once you see this, self-awareness loses its status as the final destination of personal growth. Instead, it becomes a mandatory invitation. It is the absolute starting line for the actual uncomfortable work of changing your behavior. The challenge is to shift your daily focus away from the endlessly analyzing your past and toward actively interrupting your patterns in the present. The most meaningful phase of human development only begins when we learn how to live differently because of what we finally see. If you're ready to bridge the gap between knowing and doing, you don't have to do it alone. Visit Noomii.com and you can get up to 5 free coaching sessions to start doing that work.